just these high fee products that are touted by, the institutions, I would stay clear from them.
Hi, everyone. This is Jack Allwild with another Money episode. Today, we have very special guest, Dr. Christopher Loo. He's a physician who became financially free at the age of 29 and retired early at the age of 38 as a result of making strategic investments after the 2008 financial crisis. You can find him at the Financial Freedom Podcast on YouTube with his almost 2,000 subscribers and almost 5,000 videos. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Hey Jack, thanks for having me. And I really love this, and I love this. Everybody just calls me Chris. I'm just so used to that. And we can go on a first name basis.
Okay. Well, Chris, so before we get into how you found personal finance through your work as a physician, I do like to ask everyone, what was your relationship like with money growing up?
Well, I would characterize my money archetype growing up as, money is very valuable. It's a resource. It's like it was not to be wasted. It was to be utilized. It was used to be spent appropriately. So, you paid for your food and your housing, your transportation, but you always had to save, for a rainy day or something happened. And as I grew older, I realized that the value of money just stayed the same, but the I always studied the rich and the really successful, and they were always talking about investing. What investments were they making? So this led me to really study money, how to grow, how to save it, how to protect it, and ultimately, how to grow wealth. So
Mhm.
that's kind of, the backstory.
So was money like a everyday conversation in your house growing up, or was it something your parents kind of kept to themselves, or how did they incorporate money into the discussions?
Well, I was very fortunate because talking to my friends, a lot of their dinner discussions were around just kind of sports or just, everyday like movies, TV. And at the dinner table, our money conversations were money was very important. And the way to wealth that was emphasized was you got a good education, you got good grades, you got a stable job, you were a professional, you got a high income and you saved and invested. That was kind of the money discussions. Um, and just around the idea, just like money as a resource. So, and I'm happy to expand upon that.
Sure. Yeah. Why don't money is a resource? Or sometimes you hear people say money is a tool.
Yeah. When it was really interesting because growing up in the family, because my parents were first generation immigrants. And so money was very important. It was like just because like my parents came in to the U United States in the 70s, with a suitcase and $200, which in today's nominal terms would probably be $1,000 to $2,000. And they just scrimped and saved. And just money was very important. It was a means of survival. And then as I grew older, as we climbed up the middle class ranks, we realized that money could be used to help people. It could be used to as a status, to gain some respect. It could be used to fund education, to spend money as a kind of discretionary spending, go out to dinner, hang out with your friends, travel, these types of things. So
When you decided to become a physician, and then can you walk us through like how many years into being a physician did you really start maybe honing in on your personal finances, or was it something you always liked on the side? Can you talk us through that dynamic there?
oh, that's really great question. And I really love this question because I emphasize, so I'm kind of I'm a late Gen Xer, early millennial. It's kind of like born on that kind of cusp. And I can remember just like kind of the days where you like Blockbuster, these types of things, you had a dial phone, you know, and I remember, like I said, kind of these money discussions were around, the way to the path to wealth and financial success was through a job. That was kind of the main thing. And my grandparents always emphasize, the government's going to take care of you, Social Security, that, that's the way to financial security. And then my parents' generation, which kind of were the boomers, were the way to path to security was like Social Security is not going to help you. So you have to get a good job and you have to work for a company for 50 years. Their pensions are going to fund you for life. And, you save and invest in a 401k. So those were kind of the mantras that I grew up with. And at that same time, a tectonic shift was occurring with the internet. So the internet was coming. I graduated in 96 from high school. And I remember like the first application was email. And email was just kind of like this new thing. And I mean, we saw what email did to the post office. And so ultimately, my goal around these types of money conversations was to own my own destiny, to control my own destiny. And it was really kind of the idea of financial freedom was always equated to kind of like a job and but realized now I realize that freedom, you have four components. You have financial, you have time, you have location, you have emotional freedom. So, like for example, a lot of my doctor friends who are still working, they may have financial freedom, but they don't have time freedom, and they may not have emotional freedom. They don't have location freedom. They have to work for the place where they have the job. And so, I mean, only have one component. A lot of them are happy with where they are, but like I said, there's different components. So, um, I've always been an entrepreneur, but I followed that safe, secure path because that was kind of just what I was growing up and used to. What was my turning point was in 2000, in 2000, 2001. It was the dot-com crash. It was the Enron WorldCom scandals. And then you had 2008 financial crisis. And at this point, I'm going through my medical career. I'm a second year medical student, and I started to see the unravelings of healthcare. Almost 18 years before the COVID pandemic hit. And I was like, I don't like where this is going. I have to start preparing because I don't want my future to be dependent on like a CEO or a hospital or a corporation. I want to own my future. So I started really reading, and I picked up this fantastic book. It's like one of the life-changing books of my life. It's called Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm sure you've read it. I'm sure a lot of the listeners have read it, but that really opened my eyes to what was happening, just in terms of the economy, just in terms of government, inflation, kind of these, taxes, and these whole mantras were, we were, these whole mantras were, you get good grades, get an education, get a good, safe, stable job, you save, invest, kind of these things were just kind of, I mean, they were true in a sense, but they were also becoming untrue. So I started to really delve into it. And like I said, I've always been fascinated with the uber successful, for example, like Michael Jordan or Kobe or Bill Gates. I was reading biographies, Warren Buffett, all of these people. I wanted to gain their insights. Why were they billionaires while a lot of people were continuing to struggle and just barely make it? And so like my mindset shifted. It was like the rich always invest in assets. So assets could be businesses, you could start your own business, could be stocks, could be real estate. And at that time it was just kind of like stocks and real estate because that was kind of like the easy, like, build a business. Now it's really easy to build a business using digital tools such as, podcast, YouTube channel, blog, these types of things. But back then it was just kind of like stocks and real estate. So I was actually fortunate because I was like studying at this time, and this was right when the '02 to like '06, '07 bull market. So I got really lucky. I didn't have any student loans, and I was able to invest in rapidly appreciating stocks, and I would learn about options, and I was trading options and making a lot of money, and I was pouring it into real estate. I was just doing it very strategically, very safely. It was just a time of great liquidity and just great economic time. And
Mhm.
then, so then, fast forward, I'm a physician, I'm in training, the 2008 financial crisis hits, and I'm like, this is my opportunity. In Houston, real estate was severely underappreciated. It was like 40%, and just to give you an example, a two-bed, two-bath condo, about 1,500 square feet. Back then, rents were like, $1,500. And today's nominal terms would probably be like 2,000, 2,500. Really great shape. You could buy them for 50, $60,000 in 2008, 2009. So it was just kind of like no brainer. I had this experience, so I started investing strategically from 2008 to 2016, and I was able to invest my way to financial freedom. Became a multimillionaire in my mid 30s, was able to retire. And then, I took a year off, just kind of contemplate what I wanted to do and just I knew there was more to wanting I wanted to do more. I wanted to make more impact. So I started learning from digital entrepreneurs, these YouTubers, these Instagrammers. They were making seven figures, eight figures. I'm like, wow, how could they be doing that? And they were developing a strong personal brand. So I learned from them. And I started Financial Freedom for Physicians, which is mission is to help doctors get a hold of their finances so that they can control their time, their finances, their emotions, and ultimately lead happier lives. And it's grown because a lot of in the early days, I was doing a lot of keynotes. I wrote a lot of books. I was doing a lot of coaching, consulting, did a lot of healthcare IT. And then I parlayed that into building a brand, a media brand, which was really helped by the COVID pandemic because I started the podcast in 2020 and it was just kind of like a side thing. And it really exploded during the pandemic. And by the time the world opened up, I was like, I could just go into this full time and just make it a full on brand. So that's where we are today. Fast forward 4 years from COVID, and it's been, we've got sponsors, we've got advertisers, and it's been amazing.
Awesome. So I could ask you a lot of things, but just to clarify, so what age were you when you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I was 22 years old, actually 24
22.
years old, 24 years old.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so when you were investing from like '08 to 2016 in real estate, how were you balancing being a physician or studying with the investing part?
Yeah, so it was really great. I was very fortunate because I didn't, my goal was to just buy one or two properties a year and just rent it out. And it was so like time wise, it wasn't like impossible. So I was like, I had a good property manager, my partner, now wife, she was very supportive. And so, and back then, you didn't have as much problems with like tenants, and you didn't have much problems with like just like pipes bursting or like tornadoes or hurt these things are more prevalent these days, so they require more time. And so basically I was just investing on the side, and on top of that, I had a good salary, so I was like dollar cost averaging into index funds. So it was basically, I was taking my earned active income, the money that I was trading my time for, and I was putting it in my money to work in these investments that were, producing cash flow and tax savings and, all of that. So that's how I got over the time. And once I was able to invest that and get my time back, then I started investing my time into building a brand and helping others and sharing and giving back.
So are you working as a physician in any sort of capacity anymore, or are you totally out of
Yeah.
it?
Well, I was able to retire 8 years ago, like fully retire. And
Okay.
so now it's just optional. I did, I do telemedicine, and I do coaching and consulting, but I don't go into the hospital. I don't have to go in, and I don't have to like do procedures. I don't have to see patients if I don't want to. So.
And since you've gotten, more experience, how does your real estate portfolio look like right now? And have you started to get out of that and maybe go even more passive and just like sell options off like covered calls or something like that?
Oh, great question. So I bought my last property in 2018, and I will say that I will say that the best time to have gotten into real estate is 2009 to about 2018, 2019. When I look at the market, and I'm still like, I talk to my colleagues who are involved, I still, follow up on it, but I don't actively. And my rentals and my portfolio are managed by a property manager. So, those are just kind of like they produce the passive income that allow me to back up my time, get my financial freedom so I can focus on other things. Um, So, but I think, I've really with just kind of, I think now with interest rates and just kind of like this kind of um, uncertain economic climate, now that Trump won last night, there may be a little bit more clarity and certainty and just kind of more pro-business. So, but I'm always, I think real estate at this point, unless you're like a professional, like, kind of like the Black Rocks or, these big or portfolios, kind of the smaller investor, or if you're just investing on the side, you got a great deal and the numbers work out, that's fine. But I think it's a little bit harder to make it now, especially, with laws and regulations and also climate change as well. So
Yeah, I totally agree. Like the rent ratios, at least where I'm investing in, mostly in Michigan, have not been as favorable the last few years. So
yeah,
I've been like flipping raw land out in Arizona and not doing so many rentals.
yeah,
So I echo what you're saying.
yeah.
Um, for for people that are listening to this and maybe they're not super passionate about their job and they want to develop a glide path to doing something that they really like, what would be some advice you'd give them?
Okay, yeah. So main thing is cut your expenses and like whether you're Uber, Lyft, or you're a waiter, waitress, or you have a good corporate job, kind of a, pharmacist, doctor, that type of thing. Keep your expenses as low as possible. And what you want to do is you want to save and invest the rest. So the easiest way is just low cost index funds that track the Dow Jones, the S&P, and the NASDAQ. You do that with your earned income, you will get financially free over around 3 to 4 years, approximately. So just basically save and invest. Real estate, a little bit more riskier, a little bit more time intensive, has to have a little bit more experience. There's a lot the ways you can get burned on that. But you can invest in real estate on the side. However, a lot of areas like kind of the real estate is overvalued and it's hard to get in unless you have significant funds or you're a high income earner. Um, Options are also very risky as well if it's just kind of the market volatility. So I would just stay clear. But the easiest way is just low cost index funds, save and invest. Always invest in yourself. Like that'll produce more return than any sort of investment, and just knowledge and collaboration like we're doing right now. Like I said, the other thing that I really recommend is start a brand. So basically, easy thing, just start a LinkedIn profile or Instagram or Twitter, a blog, podcast, these type of things, so that you maintain a digital presence, so people can see you and reach out to you and network with you. That's really important as well, whether you're doing it full time or whether you're doing it on the side. So that's where I would start first.
Awesome. I really like the sentiment of like being lean, living your life in a lean manner.
Yeah,
I did have one question on your runway. So when you have a long runway, what are you actually keeping the cash in? Are you just keeping like a high yield savings account? Do
yeah.
you view kind of like some of your like a stock portfolio as perhaps part of your emergency fund? Where are you keeping the cash?
Yeah, great question as well. So I have what I do is what I did was in before the interest rates were before banks were giving 5%, a lot of that I had 2 years of runway in gold and silver,
Uh,
and just cash equivalents, other currencies, just kind of physical things, just kind of they don't produce much, but they're not losing their value. And so that's where I put it in now. With interest rates at 5% now, banks giving a little bit more, I started to convert some of my extra cash into the high yield just savings giving 4 to 5%. Nothing that's not going to be life changing, but it's just kind of just
yep.
it's extra. And then the rest is in stocks and equities and real estate. I do want to mention that, and again, this is not advice, but this is what I'm personally doing is I'm really focused on more of the sectors that have higher growth and gains, and that's particularly in the tech sector. I do also follow Bitcoin as well because I feel that Bitcoin is a very nice hedge and it's one of the best performing assets of the last decade. So I feel that the growth from this new asset class can potentially offset any sort of inflationary or increased taxes, that sort of thing. So that's just that's for listeners, but that may not fit with their profile, but that's what I'm personally doing.
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, gold is a good was a good place to have your runway stored recently, and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Um, so and then I guess one other question. So you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad. Are there any books that really made something switch on in your head that made you look at the world a little different in terms of personal finance?
Oh man, there's so many, but I would start out with Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was like bam. That was just there's very few moments in my life where it's just like I read something and it was just like I was like this is my golden ticket.
Mhm.
I also read Multiple Streams of Income
Okay.
by Robert Allen, and the concept is very interesting, and I think the author in his he was a big like real estate seminar guy. I think he was, but that book itself, Multiple Streams of Income, really changed the way I think about how, like, because in the past it was just like earned income, active income, but I'm like, what happens if your job goes away? So you have to have like other streams.
Mhm.
That was a big one. Also, I was very fortunate to read Getting Started in Options right when a bull market was underway, so I got very lucky there. Again, options are very risky, especially in this type of environment. So I don't really do that anymore, except very safe, strategic, like covered calls or cash secured puts, that type of thing. So those three. There's a couple of books that I've recently read. Ray Dalio,
Ah,
where he's talking
okay.
about just kind of like the end of American capitalism and kind of the rise of like China and India, and you're
Mhm.
starting to see places like Dubai and Singapore, London, Portugal, Argentina, El Salvador, these kind of places emerge as kind of so that was really eye-opening as well. But I would start there. I just it's The other one was Thomas Stanley, The Millionaire Mindset, and just talking about where it's like wealth is what you don't see. It's like, you see on kind of social media, like people just flaunting their wealth, but actually, if you really delve into it, they're actually just on credit cards or debt or just kind of just so, kind of talking about what is this millionaire mindset, and it really changed the way I view, like when I see like people, you know, it's like you kind of look under the covers. So those are great places to start.
Cool. Yeah, I hadn't. I really like Ray Dalio, but the
Yeah.
other three I hadn't heard, so I'll look those up. Cool.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
another
go ahead.
another one is The Fourth Turning, which is also very
Ah,
similar.
hmm.
Yeah, The Fourth
Cool.
Turning, which is talking about just these cycles, and basically we're now in the fourth turning, where it's just kind of like we've got artificial intelligence, we've got blockchain, these new technologies are just kind of upending the old industrial traditional ways of thinking.
Awesome. Well, Chris, as we're winding down, and I encourage all the listeners to go subscribe to Chris's channel, Financial Freedom Podcast. You've entered a lot of people on your show, a lot of eclectic views. Um, And I'm guessing you've heard some interesting opinions, but my question for you is what would you say is like the best and worst personal finance advice you've heard?
We'll start off with worst. Worst ever financial advice was invest in mutual funds. Mutual
Okay.
funds, you are making the institutions rich while you get poor. So that that was I'll give you a funny story. I was like, I had this money and I was transferring it to TD Ameritrade, and he was just like, oh, would you like to have a call, kind of how I can help you? And he was touting all these mutual funds. At that point, I was like, you're fired. So that's kind of that's the worst. Just these high fee products that are touted by, the institutions, I would stay clear from them, and because it's usually making them rich and not you. So the best advice I've ever got is invest in assets. Start early, uh, pour as much of your active income into assets as early as possible, because that will give you compounding growth and it gets you to financial freedom much faster. The rich know this. They do it for their kids right when they're born. So invest in assets. The easiest way to assets are low cost index funds. That's kind of like baseline. So that's the rich always invest in assets.
Awesome. Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can go reach out to you or learn more about your show?
Reach out to me, email me at Chris at Dr. Chris Loo, MD-PhD.com. I'm all over social media. I've got 5,000 followers on LinkedIn, 4,000 followers on Instagram, 2,000 on Twitter. I got 10,000 on TikTok, YouTube, almost 2,000. We got an active newsletter. Reach out to me. I'm all over the internet, the social media. You find me some way and we'll get you plugged into the system.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure and look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed this.